Hey guys, I'm going to quick go over this week's assignment. Remember, this week it's going to be shortened for seniors, so any of you that are seniors, everything will be due at noon on Thursday. So I'm just making one assignment for this week. I'm going to go over the information related to the assignment. We're going to wrap up World War II this week, all right? We're going to wrap up in terms of the total comprehension, information, all that stuff, and curriculum based on it, and then we'll do some review stuff next week. For the people that are still around in terms of not being seniors. So World War II, we're going to go from kind of that early part that you guys looked at the first last Monday, and we're going to go on through the rest of the war and up till the victory of World War II. Okay? So a little background. We have major incursions that happen from some of the points that you guys last looked at. So we had the North African campaign. North African campaign was led by few generals, but the overall one that by the end was George Patton. In Operation Torch in 1942, pushes back Erwin Rommel, who was known as the Desert Fox, a well-taught, one of the greatest military commanders that Germany has ever seen. Pushes them back into Italy after about 1942 into 1943. On the Eastern Front, with the Russians, you had the Battle of Stalingrad. The Russians were basically at their most weakest point, and eventually they turned around, started their might, and ended up defeating the Germans and pushing them back. And from there on, the Germans never, ever, ever made forefront ground on the Eastern Front. They were always on the retreat. And then within the invasion of Italy, both the Americans and the British initiated attack on Sicily first and then into Italy. Italians eventually surrender. Mussolini is arrested. Germans, however, kind of manipulate and gain control, put him back in power, but eventually resistance fighters find him when he was trying to escape at one point, and they hang him. And the ironic thing is they hang him, and then they flip him over, and they took his pants off so that he had no pants on as a humiliation tactic because they hated him so much. D-Day. I'm sure you all have heard about this. And like I said, I'd love to go more in depth, but D-Day was the initial invasion of Europe from the western side, okay? So Eisenhower is a general, Dwight D. Eisenhower, who leads the Allied troops made up of the countries that you see there, and they land on a beach called Normandy Beach in northwest France, just across from Great Britain in the English Channel. The operation is known as Overlord. It is considered the greatest land and sea attack in history because of its complexities. There are so many things that you study this, guys. It's pretty miraculous that this went off without so many problems that could have happened. General Patton actually was relieved of his command in Italy for a point, and his forces of tanks make Germans retreat because they give him a fictitious army in a different part of Great Britain where Hitler thought they were going to attack at, and in turn the Germans fell for the mistake and were weak at their most point in Normandy Beach. Eventually Patton joins the forces. He puts up more tanks, and he makes the Germans retreat by pushing through France when he's finally given a command back. France is liberated, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, within a year as time goes on in the war. Okay? So you guys can see here's a quick little map that shows you the invasion of Normandy, those different points, or each beach. The main beach was Omaha, where the U.S. was the overall command of that. Okay, this is a picture that you guys can see. If you ever watch Saving Private Ryan, that is considered the most realistic adaptation of what the landings at Normandy was like. Okay. Battle of the Bulge was another significant battle. It was Germany's last attempt, okay, to push back the Allies, all right? They had the Soviets advancing from the east, so they thought if they attacked from the west, broke through the American defenses, they could extend the war. They actually were very successful at first, and it was during the coldest time of the year in the Ardennes forest. But eventually, the Allies pushed back, and the Nazis are forced to retreat into the end of the war, okay? And the reason why they called it the Battle Bulge as well, they created a bulge within the German line, or within the American line, and pushed it back. And eventually one unit, the 101st Airborne Division, was surrounded at Bastogne. Famously, they were asked to surrender by the Germans.